And the typical average person who generally has no idea what we are talking about does not usually see these processes. In fact, why? Because they simply have a prolonged nature, and he does not catch the trends over the course of his life. But it was like that until of changes in the ratios of reference frequencies. All processes, by the law of time, have become so exposed that we can already see to whom Masonic orders and lodges are handed out. In other words, all these Masonic orders and lodges are just children's games. And whoever exaggerates he is a Mason, so what? What good does it do? And if it used to have some meaning, now it is just children's games. That's it. After the change in the informational state, the situation changes very quickly, and all their plans collapse, and they unknowingly let slip a little about what is happening. Well, one just needs to be able to distinguish these processes, and everything hidden becomes clear. This is just for erudition, as they say, by the way. The relationship between structural and unstructured management. And why was this picture drawn? Because the management of this super system from the side of these Masonic lodges, various orders, had what kind? It had an unstructured nature, meaning that inside it was a structure, but in relation to the rest of humanity, it had an unstructured nature. That is, certain information was disseminated, which prepared society for the perception of something. But I will return to the prophecies, because in principle one can endlessly illustrate with various examples. Yes, here we are. And I want to share, but you can't tell everything. In this part of our video meeting, don't think I will tell you everything in this course of lectures. In general, 303 parts. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't tell everything. Because you can't tell everything. I just want to provide a framework that shaped people's understanding of how all this happens. To provide some core, a skeleton. And of course the flesh needs to be enriched with factual material and so on. But while illustrating this Masonic issue, I will say this. We have already discussed prophecies, forecasts, and so on. How they use it and how to relate to it. For example, let's say we are the mafia. We plan to carry out, let's say, a revolution in country X at a certain time. We know it will take 10 years for this, 5 years for that, money is needed, a leader must be prepared, and so on. Well, approximately. So the timelines are, of course, very approximate, and we let such nonsense into society. Well, mostly various books there. Well, to make it more colorful and not boring, I say Nostradamus, that he is Nostradamus the foreteller. Nostradamus said that at the beginning of the century, well, at the beginning, tragic events will occur in a northern country. Moreover, it will be done by some person, like this Mikhail Gorbachev, some kind of spotted one, and so on. That is, in the most general terms, this matrix is being formed. And then people perceive this, well, how can it be, the foreteller, Nostradamus? And then, when this is done by certain structures, everyone says, well, it just happened by itself. That is, the control is hidden, you understand. That is, what is done is purposeful. There are structures, but people do not see these structures. Structural management. For them, history unfolds by itself, like the mortar, Baba Yaga. Here are some illustrations for you. Therefore, one should take all these foretellers and other divinations seriously, I want to say. But seriousness with what, when some say one thing and another says something else. By the way, this has been used by the special services, knowing our concept. That's why it is mentioned in newspapers and magazines what will happen in the Supreme Authority, what reforms will be adopted. So all of this is linked to some predictions and other so-called divinations. And the people do not see that this has all been foreseen. And most importantly, he has been prepared. That is, he is already ready for something to happen at the beginning of the century or in 2021. They predicted it, so it will be. This is what we are talking about. If the information volume with the environment exceeds the volume of well-defined capabilities of the super system, then organizing self-management of the super system only structurally will lead to the fact that at any given moment, part of the goal-oriented structures will be inactive, and organizing interaction for certain goals will be impossible due to the lack of free elements. This situation is about management failures. There is, as I read it to you, and you can review it, the super system has elements. These elements are structured in various organizations. Child. One organization is engaged in this, another organization in that, and so on, all limits. Loaded. And there is not a single free element. And this organization reflects this environmental impact, and this organization reflects and monitors this impact, and so on. When new environmental impacts arise, if the corresponding structures are not present, what will happen? Supersystem will be destroyed. There must be a combination of structural and unstructured management methods, and if we talk about the concept of public safety, why has our science not been able to formulate its attitude towards the factor we call the law of time? The informational state of society has changed, but no one even noticed it, meaning they did not pay attention. They did not recognize this factor. Who recognized it? The internal predictor of the USSR. And what kind of organization is that? No. They are ordinary engineers, people, most ordinary. But what is unusual about them? They are graduates of the first Suvorov schools, who studied under Stalin, and they were given such knowledge under Stalin, under that education system, which allowed them, possessing this knowledge, to recognize the factors. Here you have the power of the Stalinist system again. And now, thanks to the activities of these people, humanity will emerge from the global systemic crisis because the informational module, the concept of public safety, has been created. And further, this is the practice of our daily life. And from a scientific point of view, what we are talking about, what does it consist of again? It is that for the super system to function stably and be able to certainly reflect the factors of environmental impact arising during its activities, including those generated within the system itself. It is necessary for the elements of the super system to possess the necessary knowledge to recognize these factors. Again, we come back to what? One pyramid, another pyramid. One must master the methodology. That's it. Our education system should be such that all elements of the super system know this. That's all. Is the education system like this now? It is not. And many admire these specialized schools. And this is exactly what you know, but beyond that you don't understand anything. Here is your specialization. Therefore, there must be proportionality. What should it be? A mosaic perception of the world, not a kaleidoscope. Remember, again, the very first lectures, the three unities in the matter of information of the world and worldview systems. Therefore, this important conclusion, the necessity for all information from the memory of the supersystem to be accessible to all its elements, is a very important conclusion. This is what is depicted in this picture, with two vectors, the vector of the supersystem's goals and the vector of the hierarchically highest encompassing management. So, there is a supersystem, it possesses intelligence, it self-manages, there is an information exchange with the hierarchically highest encompassing management, and there is an influence from the environment and other hierarchical systems. That is, everything is as in the holistic system of the universe. And what is the speech about? When will be the best mode of self-management for the supersystem? That is, how can we consider that this supersystem operates very well? Its performance qualities are very good. It's very simple. How to evaluate? Look, if the supersystem has a vector of goals, that is, in the first place is one goal, in the second, in the third, and so on. That is, the first is the most important goal, the second is less important, and so on. And at the end of the list of goals are those that could be abandoned. Now let's imagine that God and the hierarchically highest management have the same vector in relation to us. That is, his is in the first place, in the second, in the third, and so on, in relation to the supersystems. And then when will the task be performed most effectively? When the vector of the functioning goals of the supersystem completely coincides with the vector of God's goals, well, that is the ideal option. We understand that it is currently a bit difficult to achieve this. We must strive for it. So even from what we have already discussed, what is the speech about? How to formulate the functioning of the supersystem. And what is it? These are all the citizens of our country? By the way, the government leads the country. What should be the program of our government and the head of state? What kind of society are we building? What concept are we living by? What is the vector of goals? We already talked with you, remember, when we simply considered the vector of goals without relating to the supersystem. What is the vector of goals? Where is our country heading? No one knows. What kind of society are we building? What should we achieve? No one knows anything. We need to do something. There is some fuss here. They are changing the labels on the offices. That is, from the perspective of this knowledge, it is simply ridiculous. If we talk about the sustainability of the supersystem, we need to shorten the workday so that people can work on their self-education. We need to change the entire culture. The per systems, even what we have considered, means what needs to be done. We should probably shorten the workday so that people can work on their self-education. This means we need to change the entire culture. Look at it from there. I take everything from life. This is nonsense. Simply put, a normal person should find this funny. Iron is being wasted on these huge things. I don't know how to express it here. I want to curse. There are these reinforced concrete poles along the roads, which means there are propaganda ones there. So, whoever smokes Marlboro is a cowboy, and so on. This is nonsense in 3 words. But should it be the other way around? What kind of education should there be to change people's morals? All of this should be included in the vector of goals, focusing on the demographically determined spectrum of needs. But what do we have? No one talks about this at all, in the vector of goals of our country. In general, no one knows the vector of goals at all. And even from what we have discussed, from the functioning of supersystems, we can formulate the vector of goals for the construction of our society and state. What should industry be like? What should education be like? What should we teach? What should the healthcare system be like? What should people's leisure be like? And what should it be aimed at? Well, if all of this is included, then we will work towards achieving the goals set for us by the hierarchically higher encompassing management, that is God. Now here is the next interesting question. Everyone talks about the council, Russian council. But what is a council? Well, what is it when, and what is it when? What is a council, and what is collective intelligence? If the elements forming a supersystem possess intelligence themselves, then through information exchange among themselves, they probabilistically generate collective intelligence. And here this collective intelligence is presented. One element has intelligence, another element has intelligence, and so on. This is collective intelligence. But what does collective intelligence mean? Collective intelligence is when the goal vectors of each element coincide with each other. If my goal vector has self-education in the first place and the same for you, then what? Hypotheses for you, the same for you, then what? Our intelligence is collective, but if I am for the Tsar in the first place and you are for the General Secretary, then what kind of collective intelligence can there be? We have different measures of understanding. Therefore, even based on such things, the depth of identity in vectors goal setting generates collective intelligence. This is the essence, not just what is Russianness? Is it in the body, or what? Or in blood and urine analysis? Oh, it is in the degree of conformity to God. And if your intelligence and my intelligence and so on, the closer, do they say, what is spirituality? They say there is a word, spirituality. But what is spirituality? Well, it's when he reads spiritual books. What spiritual books? Well, he enters the church. He is spiritual, standing with a candle. I will answer very briefly. Spirituality is the degree of correspondence to God. That's it. Is that okay? That's all. That's the whole definition. Therefore, one can say all sorts of beautiful words and so on. That's it. And how is the degree of correspondence measured? By the vector of goals. And how do you know this vector of goals? And one must enter into a dialogue. And how to enter into a dialogue? Then it is necessary to develop a sense of measure. Well, that's everything we have gone through together. Therefore, attempts to oppose the collective intellect are always fruitless. That is, it is pointless. That is, it is torture in the full sense. Well, finally, we will bring to a conclusion the processes occurring in supersystems. Detail. And how will we conclude? For any goal vectors, one can compare the identity of the vectors that are contained within them. Hence, what I have already mentioned, the depth of identity of the vectors. That is, if there is one goal vector, another goal vector, the power of the collective intellect of all of us together will be greater. The more our vectors match in this list, starting from the top, my vector, yours, and so on. That is, the depth of identity, the similarity of goal vectors, and the multitude of elements in the supersystem will determine the power of the collective intellect. Well, based on this, let's remember when the Russian National Cathedral was created, the Sterligov one. Do you remember? So now there are many Christian cathedrals and so on. Is there a mechanical unification of people happening? Right now, even though I am here with you in Tyumen, I received an invitation for our party. Well, in my capacity as a party member, to join some National Salvation Front. Another group of saviors is being created there in Moscow. But how do you join this front? Can you imagine we join the front with such ideals? And they want to place a Tsar father on the throne in Russia. The goal vectors do not match. Everyone will quarrel with each other, and that's it. That's why we say it's pointless. If we are to unite, we need to unite on something. There must be a common unifying platform. And the unifying platform in the end, what will it lead to again? There is God, there is no God. Materialists say there is no God. Well, what to do with them? With the Yuganovites? It's pointless. Others say God exists, but he is depicted on the icon. We say, that's not the God. There is the God that exists, and there is the God that does not exist. You are talking about the one that does not exist. How can we unite again? It is pointless to unite. That's why all these cinder blocks, all the fronts and so on fall apart. Why? Because their goal vectors do not match. So the goal vector is, so to speak, a good thing. That is, our goals align. We will always find common ground. And I will now tell you an example for your persuasion. About the Khans. Do you all know about the Khans? This is the newspaper Zavtra, the editor-in-chief. When they created the first National Patriotic Union, it was based on the CPRF. I have already forgotten. This happened in 1996. So what did he issue? What did he issue? Speaking from the podium of this Congress, he said, I am sure that by creating our union, that is the council or something, we will sweep away this hated, cynical Yeltsin regime. So, what worries me is different. They say we have united, we will sweep away. But what worries me is this. How will we disunite when we win? Why? And that's because they united to be friends against someone, but the contradictions remained. The White Cossacks and the Reds united. They entered the Kremlin. Some are for the Tsar, others for the General Secretary. What will happen? The spears are ready for battle. The sabers are out. They will be fighting each other. What does that mean? There will be no stability, no process. That's why all these patriots who say, yes, let's unite, will sweep away, and then we'll sort it out. It won't work. This mechanical unification won't happen. And so we are just explaining this to other parties, that it is pointless, that it won't work. I mean, we are all human, we all understand, we need to... But what's the point? It's useless. We need to unite, aligning our vectors of goals if we speak in our conceptual framework. They are completely different. We will definitely conclude on this important matter today. In the next session, we will continue the discussion on the concentration of processes occurring in supersystems, and after that we will move on to Gregors.